Hey guys, welcome back to What Should I Play? And today I'm going to share some memories with you and tell you why you should play Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a live-action kids TV show that premiered on the Fox Kids After School block on August 28, 1993. It featured a cast of high school stereotypes who were chosen to protect the world using powers derived from the dinosaurs. Power Rangers was based on a Japanese Super Sentai series, Kaiju Ranger. Super Sentai series are synonymous with the superhero team genre popularized in Japan by Bandai and Toei. Power Rangers reused footage from Sentai, recut with dialogue and plot from the American cast for the main fight scenes. A typical episode would consist of a villain's introduction, a plainclothes battle in which our heroes would realize they weren't quite powerful enough, a morph battle where the heroes would transform into armored superhero versions of themselves, and finally a Zord battle, where the villain would be transformed and grow to kaiju-like size. The Rangers would have to combat the supersized villain in their Zords, giant robots that can combine to form a mech suit. One of the standout features of these TV shows were their use of colorful special effects and pyrotechnics. I've always thought that being a pyrotechnic for the Power Rangers series would be a pretty awesome job. By 1994, Power Rangers had reached peak pop culture phenomenon and was being licensed out on everything from action figures to prop replicas. Being a young gamer, I thought it would be awesome if they made a video game based on it. So I told my parents, and always encouraging my ideas, they told me I should write a letter to Nintendo and tell them. My parents found an address for Nintendo as I wrote out my ideas on a sheet of loose-leaf paper, pulling in enemies from the show, the multi-tiered battle structure, and the giant Zord fights. As a 7-year-old, my handwriting sucked, and we didn't have a computer yet, so we got out the typewriter, and my parents helped me type up the letter to send off to Nintendo. When you're an impatient kid, the mail is possibly the slowest, most agonizing thing ever. Every day for weeks, I would rush home from school to check the mailbox to see if I had gotten a response. I didn't even really know what I was expecting. It's not like they were going to send me a letter saying, "Oh, we never thought of that. Here's the game of your dreams. Have a free copy." And then one day I got home and there was a business envelope with a Nintendo return address on it. I rushed in and I tore the letter open. And it was like the scene from A Christmas Story when Ralphie gets his decoder ring. I read through it as fast as I could, and it started out with a bunch of information about how they don't own the copyright and they couldn't just make games based on whatever they felt like. But they ended the letter saying to keep an eye out for an upcoming game by Bandai and Natsume, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The game was released for the Super Nintendo in September of 1994, and it was everything that I could ever want. It followed the episode structure in exactly the same way I had imagined it. And one of the most exciting features is that you had your choice of all 5 original Rangers. For a beat-em-up game, that was phenomenal, or dare I say, more phenomenal.
This is more phenomenal.
The benchmarks at that time were the Final Fight and Streets of Rage games, and their rosters only had 2 and 3 characters on their respective home ports. In the game, you start out each level in street clothes, and make your way through a stream of Cuddy patrollers until you reach the midpoint of the level. You then morph into your Ranger gear and continue on, only now you have access to your special weapons. Each level boss is taken straight from an episode of the show, and are spectacularly recreated in the 16-bit form. My personal favorite was iGuy. I remember having a particularly gross-looking action figure of him. The final 2 levels put you in the Megazord against 2 bosses. You finish them off with the signature Sword Slash, and end the level in a dramatic pose as your enemy explodes behind you. As excited as I was at the time, the game was a bit on the easier side. After a few playthroughs, I could clear it in roughly an hour. The character selection did lend some to its replayability, but each Ranger isn't really different enough to keep you coming back. There were also some liberties taken for the sake of the game. The multicolored enemies were okay for the purposes of identifying enemy strength, but it was a bit out of character when they started pulling knives, broadswords, maces, and machine guns. Plus, some of the choices for the robotic alternate enemies were a surprise, like this one, Jabba's Doorman from Return of the Jedi. Also, the music, while totally acceptable, lacks the heavy rocking tracks of the Ron Wasserman fight games, though the theme song was pretty faithfully recreated. And on the subject of sound, I do have to point out that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers contains possibly one of the worst grating sound effects ever. There were a total of 4 other games called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on various consoles, but none of them were quite the same. The Game Gear and Genesis versions were fighting games, while the Sega CD version was a full-motion video game that used clips from the TV show. The Game Boy version was the closest analog, but the lack of a color screen meant that you couldn't really tell the Rangers apart. In 1995, they released a sequel to coincide with the release of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, which used the same graphics and gameplay style. However, now you had access to the White Ranger as a playable character, and there was even a 2-player mode. At this point, interest in the Super Nintendo was kind of fading out, and the Nintendo 64 was getting hyped up, so I never got a chance to play it. I'm really looking forward to picking it up. So, do you have any memories of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Did you ever write to a game company and actually get a response? Did your dream game ever end up coming out? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, and check back next time when I help you figure out what you should play. Click here to check out last week's video.